Welcome everyone on the next episode of our webinar series BIM for Manufacturer and Manufacturing. And as usual, if you're not familiar with our webinar series, we're covering different topics related to BIM aspects, of course, in the context of manufacturers and the BIM libraries itself. So if you're not familiar with our webinars, I definitely recommend you to check our website, bimstreamer.com, where under the event section, you can find the recording from the previous episode, and there are a lot of them. So definitely recommending you to check that out if you haven't had the chance to do that before. And even though if you had, I still recommend you to have a look on that once again, because we recently released the recording from the last episode of our webinars, which were covering the topic of BIM configurators. We'll actually getting back slightly in this webinar to BIM configurator a bit, but if you would like to get more in-depth knowledge about this topic, just check that out. But let's get back to our today's agenda. So today we are actually covering the topic of let's say, the necessity of having the BIM libraries which are provided by the manufacturer in the hands of the designers. First of all, we will try to figure out. I have the agenda from the previous webinar. Sorry for that. So in the first part, we will actually try to figure out why the designers don't want to use the manufacturer libraries. In the second part, we will try to find some remedies on this topic. So how to convince the designers to actually work with the manufacturer libraries. If you're familiar with our previous episodes, you probably expecting some sort of a demo. And in the agenda right now, we don't have a demo, and there is one major reason behind that. The main reason is that we will today covering the topic of reasons why designers don't want to use manufacturer libraries. So our demo would be actually the voice of the designers. So in order to prepare to this event, we actually introduced some sort of a survey to the designers to actually get their feedback on the questions or the topics that we will try to address today. And one of our guests, which is also a designer, which is also an architect, that was actually specializing in plant engineering, and he was working for London branches of such design studios like EPR Architects and Lorraine Engineering, will tell a bit more about the reasons which actually we're collecting from the service that we've organized. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce our first guest, Mr. Tomasz Lato. Thank you, Tomek, for joining our event.
Hello, everyone.
And as usual, from the technical aspects of the webinar, we've invited the project manager of the BIM Streamer project, which actually will cover more like the technical part of orchestration of the solutions that we're about to present you today. I see that some people might have an issue with the screen. I would recommend you to check the browser, and I would recommend you to also to click the button at the middle of the screen, because by default the sound is muted. I would also ask the other speakers to mute their mics, because someone says that they have some double voice or noises. So please unmute your mics only when you're going to speak, okay?
I just say hello to everybody.
Yep, and that's the thing that I forgot to mention. Thank you, Adam, for joining. Okay, guys, so let's get back to our first part of the agenda. So the reasons the reasons why the designer doesn't really want to use the manufacturer BIM libraries. So let's start with our first question that we've asked the designers. We had something around 400 votes on that, and we've asked them what is the main reason of not using the BIM libraries. Well, actually, in order to give them some possibility to add some reasons that we didn't anticipated, we also selected the option other, and then browsed through the comments in order to get more in-depth information on top of that. But I think that the biggest issue is the quality of the content, which you see almost half of the users considers the BIM libraries provided by the manufacturer as the ones which are of bad qualities. And I think that the biggest issue which we've managed to detect while we were checking that out, the reason why these families are of bad qualities, why they are not very smart, is because very often it's more like the exports from the external CAD tools, which very often were originating from the fabrication CAD models that manufacturers are using for the fabrication, and somehow would like to reutilize or adapt these fabrication models for the BIM purposes. And as we can see, here are some example comments which pretty much confirms that. But in order to elaborate it slightly in depth, I would definitely recommend Tomek to actually put a bit more light on this topic. Tomek, the floor is yours.
Thank you. What do we mean by dummy exports? We mean families with a geometry that wasn't created in the native software, but is imported as one not editable solid. So this kind of families, regardless the level of detail, have really bad influence on model performance. And the model performance is something that we really take care of and spend much time on keeping model health in good condition, because slower model slows down our work. And there is no possibility to edit such a family, for example, to adjust the level of detail to our needs. Also, the graphics that usually is not satisfying, it's hard to change. We can't apply materials, we can't remove too much lines, we cannot hide visible meshes. So it causes a lot of problems that we need to deal with.
Adam, maybe now I will ask you one topic when it comes to dummy export, because you had the experience working also with the content that actually originates from conversion from typical CAD software. Can you compare what is the effort from the perspective of processing such families in comparison to those which were natively created within authoring tools like Revit or ArchiCAD?
Okay, so basically native files prepared, for example, in Revit are much lighter, and of course they are intelligent, so they might have some connections, so service zones, where when we are doing some dummy exports, usually that families, we can prepare the Revit families from dummy exports. However, this will be just stupid block of data, stupid block with no connections and no service zones, and yeah, very, very heavy.
Okay, thanks for the feedback, Tomek. Thanks for the feedback, Adam. In order to hear more in depth about the strategies of how you can actually create the BIM libraries properly, one of the strategies will actually use the export from the CAD systems like Inventor or SolidWorks or in general step files. And in this webinar, which the link I'm sending you over right now to the recording, you will also see the pros and cons of each and every strategy, including this one. Because, Tomek, as far as I understand, it's not the case that this strategy is not okay for all kinds of products, right? We can have some products which potentially could be adaptable to this type of conversion, isn't it?
Do you mean that? Sorry,
I'm talking about the objects which, for instance, has no modification when it comes to geometry, which are relatively simple and things like that.
Theoretically, we have a product that doesn't have any various types that we can change. That it's only it's static. So theoretically, we could accept this kind of export, but it's not healthy for our models. So we would prefer to not use it anyway.
And that's clear enough. So let's go to the second reason. So the dummy export, as someone say, the exporting something from inventor is not a BIM. So let's navigate to the second reason of not having the BIM content from the manufacturer finding attractive by the designers. And I think that we've partially covered that already, because very often the designer states that the content is definitely too much in detail, and probably somehow it refers as well to the level of geometry or level of details, whatever we call it, but sometimes also probably refers to the way how the content has been prepared. That's why it's too heavy or not. Probably, Tomek, you could tell us the biggest sins when it comes to heaviness of the object that you had to usually struggle with. So the floor is yours again.
So here I could mention a couple of aspects. I often get families which geometry is too detailed, and it causes that file is heavier and the graphics overload the software. And again, it slows down the model performance, which is really important. And of course, if we consider one family, like small changes in the detail, that level doesn't seem to be so significant. But when we realize that in a complex project, we have hundreds of thousands of families in our model, we can see how important it is to reduce the size of each family in our model. Moreover, the graphical information needs to meet clients' requirements. So in fact, we need different level of detail on each stage of project. And each project might have different requirements. So for us designers, would be beneficial to have access to families with different level of details, and not all in one, because it makes the family heavier, but separately. That would be the best scenario. And it is worth to mention here again that if the family is created in the native software, we are able to edit the family and adjust its geometry to our needs. But if it is a dummy export, we cannot do it. And another technical aspect I would like to mention are nested families. In Revit, for those who don't know what it is, in Revit we call this way a family placed in another family. And this solution gives us a lot of possibilities in family creation. But it is also a problem because it causes that the family is much heavier than the family with the same geometry, but modeled directly in the family. And the problem becomes severe when we have a family in family in family. So we have like many levels of nested families in our family. And then even simple family with simple geometry can be really, really heavy. And it is a problem because, as I mentioned before, we have many instances of a family in our model. It makes the model much heavier and slower.
Adam, maybe now the question to you, because Tomek mentioned about the nested families. I know that during the different projects related to setting up BIM platforms for manufacturer, you were also struggling with the number of levels within the nested families. And could you actually share a bit more in-depth knowledge on that part, on the number of levels that the nested families should or might have to make it sufficient and efficient from the both usable perspective and the performance-wise as well?
Okay, so theoretically, BIM Streamer platform allows us to have as many nested families as you wish. However, the recommendation is to have maximum one level of nesting families, so they are not too heavy and too complex for Revit. Because if we have too many nested families or too many nested levels of families in the family, the Revit slow down. So the recommendation is to have maximum one level of nesting.
All right, then. So let's navigate to reason number 3. Irrelevant and outdated set of information. And I just selected few of the interesting topics that actually could be somehow that could more like generalize the other comments that were under the survey. But let's just read them through. So the procurement issues, I'm guessing it's more like a topic of anonymization of the content or having it manufacturer neutral, especially for the public tenders. Too many unneeded parameters, and the data are not up to date. And there is a necessity to have the data within the BIM libraries updated on, let's say, the person here stated that it would be nice to at least have it updated at least once a year. So it was more like a wishful thinking. So Tomek, if you could put a bit more in-depth focus on this subject.
So to be honest, it happened to me not once that I downloaded a family from manufacturer's website, and later it turned out to not the information were not up to date. So as a result of this situation, I always assume that all information needs to be double checked, because there is no guarantee that they are correct. And the other aspect here, I think, is the amount of the information, because as the same as with the geometry, more doesn't mean better. And according to ISO 19650, that refers to building information modeling, the level of information is going to be determined by the client, the same as the detail of level of detail. So it should be possible to adjust the information to the requirements and the client's need. Plus, in some cases, the information about manufacturer can't be provided, can't be public, so it would be worth to have a possibility to anonymize them.
So Adam, maybe now the question to you when it comes to these issues that Tomek was referring to. So the topic of public tendering, the topic of the attributes which are needed in one stage but is not needed in the other stage, or vice versa. And so probably the facility manager requires different set of data than the designers in the early stage of the project. And of course, last but not least, the question of having the data up to date. How would you, let's say, address these topics?
Yeah, so as Tomasz said, we have a few topics here. First of all is outdated data. So the solution here is to be connected to the single source of truth of the product information. For example, the data can be uploaded via Excel or can be taken dynamically from PIM systems of manufacturers. and dynamically.
Sorry, Adam, for interrupting. Could you tell us what the PIM is, because it might not be clear for all the audience?
It's product information management systems. Actually, it might be also a database where the data is stored. So we are dynamically taking data from these places and inject them automatically into BIM files, and that's how they are keeping up to date. So that's a solution for one problem of outdated BIM files. The second problem is too many unneeded parameters. So the solution for this one is providing the feature we called dynamic level of information. In that case, the client that needs to download the family from the manufacturer webpage can select what kind of attributes he is interested in, and these attributes will be dynamically on the fly injected into this file, and he will be able to download the Revit family with only with the attributes he has selected. So this is the second problem. The third that was mentioned was anonymization of the data. So this is also possible that the manufacturer can prepare the families that are anonymized. It can be solved on a two ways. One of the option for switching the attributes to anonymized is to make the dictionary of the keywords that should be replaced with some other words, or just prepare the special anonymized attributes that will be injected into such families, and they can be available on the web page for downloading for public tenders. That was 3 topics, and the fourth was Martin.
No, I think that we have only 3 topics on this slide, so I think
only
that
3. Okay, so
hold your horses. We will have another slides that you can actually cover different topics. But mentioning about the level of information need and the fact of creating the BIM files with the data which are only relevant for the designers and also involve anonymized and non-anonymized version, and definitely recommend you to check the recording from the webinar that I just pasted into the chat window. The webinar is conducted together with Olaf Thies, the head of BIM at Geze GmbH, which actually covers the topic of level of information need and also data anonymization. So this is more in-depth recording that covers this topic. But let's go further to the next reason. Well, I called it 3A because it's very much related with the data itself, but adapt slightly different topic. The topic related with adapting the data to proper market, and not only to proper market but also to specific designers' requirements which they might internally have. So they might have some internal schedules according to some internal standards, and also the topic of data dictionary, as you can see here within the comments, appears. So maybe let's focus on that part. Why the designers want to have the data in not only in English but in the local language. So Tomek, maybe the floor is yours here.
Actually, it's hard to say anything because personally I always use English families and English libraries, because I always work on projects where English was required language. So I'm not objective here. But if we talk about data properly adapted, I would mention that it's worth to include libraries in both systems, metric system and imperial system, because it's not always provided. And the change in the software is not always accurate. So it's worth to think about it earlier than already in the software. And regarding the data dictionaries and schedules, it is important to provide parameters that are able to be scheduled in our software, in our models, because we get families with many parameters, but we are not able to schedule them and use them in our projects, and that's a problem.
I think that when it comes to schedules and data dictionaries, I would recommend you to check these two events that I pasted you the link to. One is the event which covers the topic of the Building Smart Data Dictionary that we were organizing together with right now former, but by that time it was the project manager of the BSDD. And the other one is the topic covering the E-team in the context of BIM, so E-team, MC, which somehow refers more in depth into the topic of the data dictionary. So we won't get too much in depth on top of that, but maybe I will ask slightly very shallow question to touch this topic slightly to Adam. Adam, what does the data dictionaries like BSDD or in general standards like E-team gives us? What kind of benefits it brings on the table?
Actually, it's some kind of standardization of the attributes we keep in our products. For example, with E-team MC, we can prepare the templates, the generic templates that can be used for different manufacturers, and all of them will be in good level of details and provide the right data, the good format for the designers, because they will not be too heavy. I also would like to add something according to the languages that we are covering here. So from BIM streamer point of view, it doesn't matter if we will create the files in 1, 2, or 10 different languages. According, it's just the matter of the attributes and their translations that will inject into the system. And the same according to the availability of the products within different regions. So for example, if in Germany we are selling windows in 10 different sizes, and in Poland in 5 different sizes, and in Scandinavia just 2 types, the prepared Revit models for those markets will contain only the number of products that are really available in that regions. So I think that's very important for the designers to have the correct information of what is available in on the local markets.
And when it comes to the translation, does the standards, like for instance E-team, helps us somehow when it comes to translating or adapting to different languages the content, the BIM libraries?
Yeah, as I said, E-team is a standard, so it provides also the translations in different languages. So we can just the manufacturer just provide the E-team code that is the value for this attribute, and the E-team standard provides the translations for the parameter names and values for the particular language.
So potentially, if I'm providing the data according to standards like E-team, I'm able to generate the translated BIM content for each and every region in an automated way. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly, because the data, the translation can be collected from E-team through the API, the programming interface provided by E-team dynamically. So in such case, when we are when we have only the E-team attributes, in that case, manufacturers even don't need to provide the translations.
Okay, crystal clear. The next reason, number 4. We're almost in the end of the sins. So sin number 4, I would say, it's pretty controversial. It's not it's not that something is, you know, black or white in this case, but the manufacturer very often provides the Revit or in general BIM add-ons as the only way of dealing with their BIM libraries. And as we can see, 50% of the 50% of the, let's say, market agrees with this approach, and the other 50 not necessarily. So every second person is willing to install the plugin without any condition, and every second as well either don't want to install that at all or has some specific condition that needs to be met in order to install the plugin. And I just find out the one, let's say, descriptive comment that could picturize the reason, which refers to the number of too many plugins installed at once. But maybe I will just hand over the voice right now to experts. So Tomasz, if you could actually explain that more in depth.
So I'm in the group only with killer features. In general, I don't think forcing to anything is a good practice. So I believe I would prefer to have a choice if I can use a library within installing plugin or without plugin. And it's not always a beneficial solution, plugin. Sometimes we need to use a specific product, specific solutions. We have short deadlines and we have really long-lasting process of installation of new software because it needs to go through IT, and IT considers each new software as dangerous. So it takes time. Plus, we install, I think all of us install a lot of plugins because software misses a lot of useful tools. And more plugins means that the program, the software opens longer. It takes maybe not much longer time, but takes more time, and there's just not enough space for all plugins on our toolbar, and it's more difficult to use them. And finally, there are some limitations because we cannot install plugins for Revit LT, for example, right?
Yeah, so it could be probably the case that in one organization, not all the users use the full version of Revit. Probably some of them might, let's say, due to some economic reasons, work only with the LT version. I'm guessing that this could also be a case. Adam, if you could actually tell a bit more about the plugins itself and this secret term called killer feature. What does that mean to have a killer feature within the plugin, and when the plugin doesn't have a killer feature?
Okay, so according to the survey, I would like to say that according to our manufacturer clients, the division is very similar. It's something like 50-50. Some of the manufacturers believe that it's very important to provide the plugin for with BIM products to their clients, and some thinks that, well, no one wants to install plugins, so we don't need it. However, those that decide to provide the Revit plugin for their clients also would like to add some killer features for their users, so their clients really wants to install that plugin to use the benefits that provide within this plugin. So the examples of such killer features is, for example, bill of materials. So dynamically count the number of manufacturers' products within the project, and the possibility to send it for the quotation to the manufacturer. The other proposition of the killer feature is, for example, preparing dynamically pipe systems using routing preferences within Revit. The same case will be, for example, with cable trays or duct systems. So how it might work. For example, user can select from the form in the Revit with what kind of pipes of these manufacturers he wants to work, and what kind of fittings should be used to connect the pipes. And then when he selects the products he wants to use from this manufacturer, the Revit is creating the routing preferences, automatically loading the up-to-date cloud. And then when the user is drawing the pipe system in the project, the fittings are added automatically by the Revit. So it simplifies and make the process, the creation process of the pipe system much faster than make it one by one, putting the fittings to the pipes.
Yeah, I think, not sure, guys, whether you agree with me or not. I think that in general, having the plugin that is only an online catalog is not a good enough incentive to convince someone, or at least the latter 50% of the user, to install anything, which can be more like fulfilled by just entering the website. But Adam, you mentioned a bit about the dynamic creation of the systems within the plugin and the bill of material as the killer example of the killer feature. I would definitely recommend you to check one of the recording that we had some time ago with the head of BIM in the UPONOR, where UPONOR explains exactly how the new BIM platforms looks like, what are the killer features of the plugins that they are actually offering, and they are definitely not limited just to be an online catalog within the Revit itself. So the next, and I think the last reason of not using the BIM library is more like slightly neglecting the fact of open BIM, the IFC format, and which can be open, of course, not only in Revit but also in other authoring tools. I know that it's not that important, considering at least consider based on the data that we have right now, and the data are pretty accurate because over 1,500 people replied to this survey, where we see, well, great majority of them believes that it's the Revit that is the main go when it comes to the BIM libraries, and it's hard to deny that. But still, on the second place, we have this open BIM topic. So 17% believes that this is also pretty important to deliver the solutions within the IFC. So Tomek, go ahead.
So as a designer working in Revit, I need in the first place family created in Revit format. If I need to exchange model in IFC format, I export whole model, not families separately. So IFC format for me is not a perfect solution because it's not editable, and I don't. It doesn't give me the same that in this as a family in native format regarding working in Revit. But on the other hand, taking into consideration the amount of different software and that some of them might not be so popular, I can imagine that would be worth to provide also open BIM format but along with native other native formats, popular formats like Revit or Archicad.
Yes, and I think that Revit and Archicad, let's say excluding the Revit, is on this. The IFC is on the second place in this case. And when I was browsing, the comments, I didn't see many other platform. Maybe Tekla appears once, but not many other platforms except these two, plus of course the IFC. And in terms of supporting Revit and Archicad, I recommend you to check this webinar that I listed at the very beginning of our chat conversation, where we were covering different strategies of preparing the BIM libraries for Revit and for Archicad. But let's get now focus on the solutions, because we've actually covering the reasons. Let's just try to focus on what would have to be done to convince the designers to actually start using our content. Of course, so if the reason was that the content is too heavy, too detailed, and and it's not very intelligent, I think that the answer here is not very, let's say, enlightening. Probably it was pretty much obvious, but nevertheless, light and parametric objects are the winners. Tomek, put a bit more on that.
Yeah, so I actually would have to sum up everything I said already, so that a family should be editable. I would like to have possibility to choose what level of detail and what level of information I can download within the family. And I would like to have assurance that the information in the family and the family itself is up to date, that it's not outdated. Plus parameters that I can schedule. And from my point of view, these are the most important parts. And the light aspect is, the light family is also, as we mentioned, not exported from other software, but created in native software. And not using too many nested families inside of the family.
Okay, so the families is more like one aspect of the interaction within the BIM between the manufacturers and the designers. But designers very often offer some additional tools, tools which somehow could be a game changer or a deal breaker, whatever, depending from which angle we're actually looking at this topic. So Adam, maybe when it comes to the tools, so something a bit more which convince designers to start using the manufacturer products by using the manufacturer tools. If you could actually put a bit more comment on the right-hand side of this slide, again, the question, what are the expectations of the manufacturer when it comes to the tools that of the designers, when it comes to the tools that the manufacturer should provide?
Okay, so maybe first of all, I will comment the left slide also. As we can see, the percentage result of this survey, we can see that it looks like a pyramid of the client's needs. So the most needed are light and parametric objects, and then the more experienced users require also that light parametric objects to be able to have level of information needs, so different number of attributes. And the users that are the most experienced expected from manufacturers also to provide some tools which will help them to automatize some processes or help them to choose the correct products. And according to the generating design and systems that we have 18% on the left slide, now we can move to the right survey, where we have the division of the tools. So one of them is schedules, pricing, and calculators. So that are some tools that can help manufacturers to, for example, bill of materials in Revit plugin, which helps them to calculate how much products do they need and how much what big their budget should be to cover that products in the project. The second one, product select wizards. It might be some tools that helps them to select the correct products they want. So, for example, choosing the right color, the right size, and things like that. Assembly configurators, it might be very various number of configurators, from simplest one where we just inject the attributes in different level of information on or language, to the more sophisticated where we can split the nested families and combine it in a more assembly products. And the last one, BIM design generators. This, maybe you can tell that the next webinar will be about this topic, generating designs. And these are the most complex processes within manufacturers and their clients, where a lot of work needs to be done manually at the moment, and that work can be automatized. So the example for this case might be, for example, what we are doing for one of our customers at the moment. These are roof drainages. So the clients provide the plan of the roofs and, for example, some design for the roof drainage, and the system is automatically validating this roof drainage, if it's okay or not, or what kind of elements needs to be moved a little bit left, right, or maybe add a new one, or change the pipe size to make this drainage work correctly. So this might be examples of such tools.
Adam, I knew that already. Probably you didn't, but you should never go to cinema after Adam, because he is actually doing spoilers all the time. So yes, the next webinar is going to be about the generative design and the topic of actually making the automation for the designers that they would just love to use. Of course, everything with the utilization of the manufacturer products. So if you're interested in general about the generative design and automation in the design, definitely register for the next episode of our BIM for Manufacturer series. But let's get back a moment for the topic, this previous slide, and the topic of pricing calculators. Adam, I know that in general in Revit we do have the bill of material functionality available out of the box. So why in general the manufacturer needs to create its own? Is it something related with maybe some specific calculation of the bill of material depending on manufacturer product portfolio? Could you put a bit more light on that?
In general, manufacturers prefer to create their own bill of material schedules because they want to provide some additional attributes information to this bill of material information. So, for example, some information about packaging, about sizes of the products, because, for example, pipes might be selling in meters, 5 meters, or 2 meters, or 100 meters. And in that way, we can provide there some kind of logic that will calculate what is the best option for the number of items that should be bought to have the less weights.
Yeah. And when it comes to the assemblies configurators, probably it's somehow related with what Tomek already mentioned concerning the number of nested families and the heaviness of the families. But why the assemblies configurators might be beneficial to overcome this issue?
Could you repeat the last?
So how the assemblies configurators are able to overcome the issues to make the object more lighter and more parametric?
So in general, manufacturers for the simplicity might provide the BIM, the Revit files or the BIM models that collects all of the possible variants of the product. So let's say we have a window, and that window might have a different type of frame, vents, handles, glass, and stuff like that. And user, by choosing the configuration of that window that he's interested in, reduce the number of options that we should have in the final BIM file. So when he selects only the one option that he wants, on the fly, we can, for example, remove all of the not necessary, not used types and nested families that we have in the master file. Or different example, we have some master file where we have some nested families which are general, but they can be replaced with some different options. So for example, we have some electric slots, and we have different plugins for different countries, and we decide to switch one plugin with another one. So we are selecting what we are interested in, and in how, for example, how many outputs we have and what type of outputs we want, and we are generate that product on the fly and provide it to the end user automatically.
Yeah, probably the European designer is not very much interested in Chinese power outlets, and I think so. It may be not necessarily to slow his all model down to have the US and Chinese and UK power outlets if they are working in Germany. But configurators, you're right, definitely can address that. And the funny thing that you mentioned about this example, because this is exactly the example that we were presenting on the BIM configurators webinar recording. So if you wanted to check that out, definitely check the recording. Okay, so once again, spoiler alert was already right. So the next episode is about the generative design. So how to create the automation for the designers that they will just love to use and love to use your product. Interested? Click the link within the chat window and sign up. Well, right now we have something like 2 or 3 minutes for the questions. So maybe let's walk through the questions that you've already asked at the very beginning. Okay, I will skip the parts which refers to the technical issues like audio, voice, noises, video, and so on. I'm not able to answer it, so maybe I will focus on those that I am. So what kind of families are bad families? I think that it was more like recap several times. So the families which are pretty much dummy ones, heavy, with outdated or irrelevant data. Not sure whether this answers the question. If not, please repeat it in more concrete way. The other question, which I'm not 100% sure whether we are able to answer it, but I will read it anyway. So we offer type catalog-based Revit families of our products. However, we noticed that many designers are not using them correctly. Their drag and drop file directly in Revit, resulting in wrong dimensions. Do you have any experience with that? I'm not sure whether we are somehow not referring to selection wizard, maybe some filterings. I don't know how this how to answer that differently. Maybe guys would like to put a bit more light on that, but probably we would need to verify how the current catalogs looks like to actually answer that. I don't know whether Adam or you, Tomek, would like to answer.
I think it refers to a function where you can export all types with parameters to a TXT file.
Okay.
And while loading the family to Revit model, you can choose which types you want to.
All right, now I got it.
I think the question is about it, but like from my side, the only answer is information education, and you know, the users just need to get used to it to load families through the browser, not drag and drop.
The other thing is more like a statement rather than the question. So and somehow it confirms, let's say, your part of the survey. So installing the plugin only with the killer feature, and I think one of our visitor actually agrees with that as well. Another thing is, could you detail the issue related to parameters right to using schedule? Tomek, maybe you could actually put a bit more. What do you mean by parameters which are right to be used in schedule?
So in general, and in the, like, let's discuss about Revit, because I know Revit. In Revit, we need to have shared parameters to include the parameters in our schedules. Like if we let's start again. To schedule parameters from families, we in our project model, we need to make them shared. So if they're not shared, we are not able to schedule parameters from families loaded. So they just need to be created as shared, and we need to have access to the file with shared parameters to transfer them to our shared parameters file.
And then once you can use them in schedules, what happens then? What does that give to manufacturer that these parameters are placed in schedules, and what does that give it to the designers?
I mean, we always, when we schedule products, like elements of the model, we want to see like basic information about the elements, like size. I don't know. It depends on what kind of product. If these are doors, we need to we want to know the fire protection level. We want to know the sound isolation, acoustic isolation. So this kind of parameters, if they are already in the family, when we create a schedule of doors, we would like to be able to schedule them in our model.
Okay, so this is more like a crucial thing in terms of the usability of the families to have a proper schedule, shared parameters.
Definitely.
Okay. Okay, so I think, guys, we're actually about to end the webinar. In case you have another questions, just drop me an email and I would try to answer them. If you also would like to gain the access to this slide deck, please also write me an email. I will send you over the PDF. And I would definitely recommend you to subscribe for our newsletter and check the next events concerning the BIM for manufacture. I would like to thank you, our guests. Thank you, Tomek. Thank you, Adam, for visiting and for the knowledge.
Thank you very much.
And thank you thanks all visitors that actually managed to stay to the end, and it was quite a lot of them. I hope you enjoy it, and see you next time. Bye.